In the folds of time, where science and mystery intertwine like golden threads in a cosmic tapestry, stands the enigmatic figure of Saint Germain. The one who was called the Count of Saint Germain is not only remembered as an adventurous courtier and polymath, but also as the quintessential alchemist, a master who deciphered the hidden secrets of nature and spirit. His legacy unfolds before us like a book of ancestral wisdom, revealing a path of transformation and self-knowledge that has fascinated seekers through the ages. In this book, Studies on the Alchemy of Saint Germain, we are invited to explore the depths of a wisdom that transcends the limits of time and space. Alchemy, this hidden art that sought perfection and enlightenment, is not merely about the transmutation of metals. It is a spiritual practice aimed at the transformation of the soul. As we decipher the mysteries of this discipline, we discover the crucible of eternity, where the sacred fire purifies and elevates our consciousness, leading us to a state of being where the divine manifests in the everyday. Through the pages that follow, cosmic formulas, ancestral secrets, and teachings that have endured through the centuries will be revealed, awaiting rediscovery by those who dare to dream and question. Each chapter is an invitation to introspection, a call to awaken the alchemist residing in each of us. With the breath of the Holy Spirit guiding our steps, we will explore the sacred dance of creation and union with the divine, where true alchemy becomes the art of living with purpose and love. Embark on this fascinating and transformative journey, where the wisdom of Saint Germain illuminates our path, blurring the boundaries between the material and the spiritual, allowing each reader to discover their own essence, the most precious treasure that resides in the heart of humanity. Alchemy is not merely ancient knowledge. It is a pathway to freedom, immortality, and connection with the divinity that resides within us all. So open your mind and heart, and let the magic of Saint Germain's alchemy envelop you in its eternal embrace. The study on alchemy was originally published as a series of weekly letters from the Ascended Masters to their students around the world, titled Pearls of Wisdom. These letters, which contain highly personal instructions, were dictated to the messenger Marc L. Prit by the Ascended Master Saint Germain. The alchemist master Marc L. Prit, a master of the 20th century, demonstrated the laws of chemistry and cosmic consciousness to thousands of devotees of the sacred mysteries before his ascension on February 26, 1973. By virtue of his spiritual attainment, Marc L. Prit transcended the cycles of karma and reincarnation, and after his transition, his soul reunited with the Spirit of God. Today, his students affectionately call him the Desire, as he continues to guide them on their path under the direction of the Darjeeling Council of the Great White Brotherhood. Marc Prit founded the Summit Lighthouse in 1958 in Washington, D.C., to publish the teachings of the Ascended Masters in order to fulfill his mission as a messenger. He and his wife, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, were intensely trained by Saint Germain, the hierarch of the Age of Aquarius, and by their guru, the Ascended Master El Morya, head of the Darjeeling Council. Marc and Elizabeth Prophet gave lectures and seminars throughout the United States and abroad. In 1971, they founded Summit University to provide disciples from the East and the West with the progressive revelations of God's servants in this age through the word of the Lord given to the messengers. The Ascended Masters continue to impart the teachings of self-realization and self-discipline as given by Christ and the Buddha. In this way, the initiations of the Holy Spirit, which are essential for humanity's transition to the Age of Aquarius, are accessible to all who wish to receive them. Saint Germain, who referred to himself as the Holy Brother, is an ascended master whose multiple reincarnations from the earliest golden age of the Sahara to Francis Bacon are characterized by a life pattern bringing forth the light of Christ to liberate humanity. In England during the 11th century, during his incarnation as Roger Bacon, 1220 to 1292, he began the practice of alchemy and science. Later, he incarnated as Sir Francis Bacon, 1561 to 1626, becoming an occultist, statesman, philosopher, and essayist, reaching the rank of First Imperator of the Rosicrucian Order. He was considered the brightest mind ever produced, and is best known as the father of inductive reasoning and the scientific method, whose greatest legacy is the technology we possess today. He ascended as a master on May 1, 1684. Since his desire has always been for humanity to attain freedom, he requested a dispensation from the lords of karma to return in a physical body and reappears as Count Saint Germain. Saint Germain studies on alchemy, the science of self-transformation. Table of contents, a cover, Study on Alchemy, Book 1. Chapter 1, The Law of Energy Transfer. Chapter 2, The Purpose of Your Alchemical Experience. Chapter 3, The Sacred Science. Chapter 4, Adventure, and Chapter 5, Necessity, Power, and Motive for Change. Chapter 6, Shaping Factors. Chapter 7, Methods of Transfer. Chapter 8, Directing Consciousness. Chapter 9, The Crucible of Being, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Epilogue, about the author. Notes, dedicated to the disciples of East and West who aspire to be alchemists in the age of Aquarius. Saint Germain, Hymn to the Sun. O mighty presence of God, I am within and behind the sun. I welcome your light pouring over all the earth into my life, into my mind, into my soul. Radiate and blaze your light. Break the chains of darkness and superstition. Saturate me with the great clarity of your white fire glow. I am your sun, and each day I will be something more of your manifestation. The new day by Besta Helios and Besta Helios and Besta. Let the light flow into my being. Let the light extend to the center of my heart. Let the light extend to the center of the earth, and let the earth transform into the new day. Book 1. The Deep Meaning of Alchemy. The deep meaning of alchemy is simply total composition, involving the relationship of all creation with its component parts. Thus, alchemy, when properly understood, refers to the conscious power that controls mutations and transmutations within matter and energy, and even within life itself. It is the science of the mystic and the force of the self-developing man who, after investigating, comes to discover his oneness with God and is willing to play his role. Saint Germain, Chapter 1, The Law of Energy Transfer. 2,000 years ago, when Christ walked on the waters of the Sea of Galilee, he demonstrated a manifestation of the natural law of levitation that operates within a structure of energy, cohesion, adhesion, and magnetism, the same principles that make flight possible. The light atoms that composed the body of Christ forcefully absorbed an additional amount of cosmic rays and spiritual substance, whose link with physical light transformed his whole body into light, allowing him to walk on the lake as if it were solid ground. His body was an entire ray of light shining upon the waters. The most dazzling concept of all was his ability to transfer to Peter this ability over energies through the power of the vision that Peter himself had of Christ in a radiant and illuminated manifestation. However, when for a moment Peter took his eyes off Christ, a vibration and vortex of human fear took possession of him, causing his body to densify, resulting in him partially sinking into the raging sea. The comforting hand of Christ, extended in pure love, re-established the alchemical link and the spiritual energy emanating from his hand, raising Peter once again to safety. Another example of the flow of energy that Master Jesus caused to emanate is that of the woman who touched the hem of his garment without him noticing at first. This demonstrates the impersonal love of God, which also responds to the call of faith of any creature that he has so wonderfully and purely formed, with the supreme hope that all may enjoy absolute cosmic freedom. These two examples refer to aspects of the great cosmic law that are not commonly known but are generally discussed or avoided by religious groups. The law of energy transfer is essential to the science of alchemy, for without it, it is impossible to create matter. This law determines that nothing can be created from nothing. The true knowledge of the law of energy transfer is essential in itself for correctly understanding the great law, for it proves that God, who makes the sun shine on both the just and the unjust, manifests through both. During his mission in Palestine, Jesus declared, "The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force." It must be understood that it is possible to seize from the hand of God some of the secrets to master the forces of nature and control matter, even when the individual and his motive are not absolutely pure. But let no one ever believe that the one who acts thus will escape the responsibility of his actions, for he is fully accountable for any use or abuse of the energies in his world. The reason I chose to begin this treatise on alchemy, with a slight admonition and a sober explanation, is not to frighten anyone, but rather to instill in all readers a profound and constant reverence toward God, the only fear that is permitted in our octave, which actually means a holy admiration that engenders in all those who love the great law of love the utmost respect and adoration for the wisdom that has so admirably and wonderfully created all things. In the image of intrepid freedom, all those who abuse the powers of the universe for selfish purposes will sooner or later realize that they must strip themselves of their illicit gains and the pain they must endure for it. It is truly terrible to produce substances to feed the poor, to heal a withered hand just by touching it, to raise the dead, and even to suspend the natural law to create miracles of infinite wonder through the magic of alchemy. This seems to be the greatest use humanity can make of the grace of heaven. Let us embrace the spirit of freedom that refers to man created in the immortal, loving, and divinely free image of his Creator, to achieve these things and many more, for the benefit of society and for the delight of its benefactors. Above all, let us praise the proper use of the blessed divine science of spiritual alchemy. The ancient alchemist has always been a picturesque figure, even to his own contemporaries, but time has adored his image with a glory far greater than he ever had. This always happens when we approach the aspects of the mystery. It is in the simple gifts of life that men must find their freedom. Although its most complex aspects are the progressive expressions of the laws of life intended to enrich the well-being of this earth and all its inhabitants, drawing all the good from them, for the benefit of the most beautiful world of freedom that can ever be conceived, even in the mind of a new Atlantean. Thus far for the moment regarding worldly society, let us now consider the individual and his respective role in the use of alchemy. The inner meaning of alchemy is simply total composition, which implies the relationship between the totality of creation and its component parts. Thus, by correctly understanding alchemy, it deals with the conscious power that controls mutations and transmutations within matter and energy, and even within life itself. It is the science of the mystic man, and it is the force of the self-realized man who, after searching, realizes that he is one with God and is willing to play his role. Over the years, men have attempted to glorify me through the fascination created by distance in time and space, which always leads to the enchantment of perspective. Without belittling this as the work of the Father, and just as the beloved Jesus and other great masters of our brotherhood, I have a particular interest in each man obtaining his rightful place and the correct understanding of how he should exercise authority in the universe and in his own world and affairs. Let each of those who begin this study understand that I speak here with a determined purpose, which is to convert each of you into a true alchemist. This means you must familiarize yourself internally with the total chemistry of God, and with how every facet of creation manifests in matter, in consciousness, and in your daily life. To achieve this correctly, you will need to meditate on and reread these lessons several times, calling upon me as well as your divine self, the I Am Presence and I Am Presence within you, so that we may illuminate any point that is unclear to you. Once the Christ self within you, at internal levels, grants you the degree of alchemist of the sacred fire, you will immediately become candidates for admission to the outer court of the Great White Brotherhood. This fact in itself is a great incentive for you to become experts in true spiritual alchemy. It has always been a false belief of human thought to deny the so-called miracles performed in the life of the great Avatar. If Jesus, as the Son of God, revealed to all those powerful formulas that, if understood and practiced, would have transformed the planet long ago, making it a paradise of perfection. Enough of foolishness and human creations, as Shakespeare would have expressed, therefore, depart with the old, the rot and the dust, and move forward with the eternal vastness of a detached spirit, a being as free as movement itself. This seems to be something outside of reality itself and projects the image of eternal hope in the tiniest gem or in a drop of dew within a single apple. I am for the freedom of all, with love. Saint Germain, Chapter 2, The Purpose of Your Alchemical Experience. The void is a sterile energy. The alchemist must develop a sense of the value of time and space and appreciate the opportunity to manipulate both. Freedom is earned through quest and conquest, but above all, through the conquest of the finite self. True mastery of the finite comes through centripetal love, the almost magnetic call of the heart of the soul to its divine source. Only the great influence of God's cosmic light can liberate the soul from the shadows that man has created, and that keep it captive. Therefore, evoke the purity of intention that will make your creative conception good. Relentlessly challenge the lower elements that arise like goblins to disturb and test the initiated plan, then patiently develop your own divine design. The ultimate goal of your alchemical experience is that the true science of the spirit is more precise than what worldly measures can establish so far. Therefore, recognize that your self is the white stone or elixir from which everything you create must proceed in an ordered and elaborated manner. If key ideas are not created within yourselves, you who are the alchemists, then every action will either be unfortunate or an imitation of another's work. Well, if it is God that you wish to imitate, then it can be said of you sincerely well done. But if it is the vanity of man that you imitate, then your conscience will remain in a lamentable state. The true self of man, from which all good design arises, is worthy of consulting what is appropriate to create. Therefore, the true alchemist begins his experience by communicating with himself in order to perceive the inspiring thoughts of the radiant spirit of his creator, limiting the lower qualities or lower states of consciousness. Society has formed many of its erroneous concepts to correct these concepts, forge a culture that ennobles and shape good character. Man and society must direct their attention toward the noble examples that man, who desires to practice alchemy, must first learn to be a reflection of the great examples of all time, who have used the celestial for their conceptions, and then he must learn to select the best qualities from his life so that alchemy can be employed, as it was the divine intention, as the noblest means to achieve the desires of the heart. Here and now, I have great suspicions that many of my listeners, but few among the most sincere students, are eager to immediately receive the philosopher's stone or the magical properties that will transform them at will into a combination of Aladdin and miraculous, sprinkled with a pinch of kindness. For those who think this way, I declare here that even though in this 9-part treatise I will impart extraordinary knowledge concerning the science of alchemy, unless they absorb the secrets of the initial lessons with absolute humility, granting me, as instructor, the privilege of preparing the teachings as God commands me to do, I seriously doubt they will ultimately succeed, and it will not be the fault of the teaching nor the master. I do not intend to give a long speech about the vanities of worldly life. However, I would like to indicate that by revealing these teachings now, the Brotherhood hopes to preserve our students from repeating the mistakes made by some of the early alchemists, whose only purpose seemed to be the acquisition of wealth and honors, and the ability to extract from universal substance the energies to transform base metals into gold. I want to hasten to tell you that not all early alchemists limited their objectives to temporary gains. In fact, many faithful souls devoted themselves to alchemy with the same reverence as they would have undertaken the quest for the Holy Grail, or considering it a divine art and the origin of Christian mysteries, as when Christ transformed water into wine at the wedding at Cana in Galilee. We wish that the original concepts of alchemy receive new meaning, and that the significance they had in the mystical schools is brought to light, as the uses to which this science is currently applied must translate into a higher dimension. If it is desired for humanity to reap the maximum benefits from it, the purpose for which God ordained this spiritual science will remain unfulfilled unless it is applied to liberate individuals and society from the troubles, confusion, and complacency with the densities of human thought. As is our desire, we who pursue the high calling of the alchemist aspire to see each one obtain a place where he can both elevate and teach the youth of the world the fundamental goals of life, showing that they engender beings far greater than those who are merely temporary, who in reality are less useful to the divine alchemist than a pacifier for a nursing child. Let no one think that because I dedicate this time to introducing you to the essence of the matter, my discourse is irrelevant to immediate affairs. Unless each person understands that they must individually exercise the right that God has granted them to use power with wisdom and love, they will not be able to avoid falling into the abysses of self-illusion and self-justification. Well, God's plan is for each inhabitant of the earth to strive to understand themselves and their destiny. The pride that arises from intellectual vanity has led many sincere students and even several worldly masters of one science or another to fall into the traps of their own making, and in many cases, they have never realized when they fell into the trap. Therefore, if a subject is included here, let no one think that they can omit it simply because it seems already known to them, or because they have considered it before. We place many gems of thought in the least apparent phrases, those which, although quite simple in their language and easy to see, may require more than a careful examination, even from the most sincere heart. St. Peter posed the question, "And if the righteous is scarcely saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear?" It is fitting for the aspiring alchemist to understand that alchemy is an exact and true science, whose illumination is conferred upon man by God himself. Its purpose is to teach men how to obtain for themselves all the grace and virtue that their life currents may need to find the way back to their point of origin in the heart of God. I do not say that they cannot learn to materialize everything their being desires, as this aspect of alchemy may be the easiest part for some, while for others it proves to be the most difficult. What I say is that they need to reflect more on the conception of these desires than on the wonderful science that makes them manifest from the invisible, since creating a worthy design is a very noble endeavor, worthy of the God we all carry within us, the one who can liberate man so that he realizes his immortal destiny. We have worked below and waited above for the children of this world to end the plundering and rapine of war, to promote the education of the needy, to abandon the desire for class distinction, and to propose, as princes of the kingdom would do, to effectively meet the needs of their impoverished but noble lineage. We are now resolved to find the faithful from all nations and equip them with the means necessary for them to escape individually from the self-imposed slavery of these times and obtain their own invaluable heritage. It goes without saying that this heritage is neither temporary nor ephemeral. In any case, when I was in Europe working to alleviate somewhat the poverty and confusion that prevailed there, I did indeed use universal alchemy to produce a substance that, although ephemeral by nature, satisfied many human needs, and was both comforting and useful to the world and to the personal lives of my beneficiaries. I see nothing wrong with this idea, nor do I look unfavorably upon the fact that they have a divine source of provision to meet all their needs. However, I feel that it is necessary for them to remain always humble and grateful, as God places in their hands the key to controlling the natural forces. Once again, as the most important idea contained here, I insist on the constant need to understand the universal pattern or plan of creation, so that everything they conceive and do is in harmony with the eternal law and with cosmic principles. I hope I have neither alarmed nor discouraged any student of alchemy from pursuing this wonderful divine study. In any case, I can now continue with greater pleasure, since I have magnified the eternally manifest principle of God's immortal intelligence, which some call inspiration, and others simply the Spirit of God. Whatever the name that man gives it, this quality is the possession of this which is necessary to fulfill the 9 points of the law. Therefore love the emanation of divine wisdom contained here, which, like the sunlight shining through the trees, touches with its luminous fingers all that it passes by, for it is only through love that they can truly possess. I am the resurrection and the life of the cosmic purpose within you. In the Man of Freedom, Saint Germain, Chapter 3, the sacred science, the domain of individual destiny, is controlled by the interaction of multiple cosmic forces, most of which are benevolent. However, in current society, due to the fact that humanity misinterprets both earthly and heavenly objectives, these forces have been diverted to other, often disintegrating purposes. Originally, alchemy was designated as an instrument for enriching individual destiny, making accessible the technique of transforming base metals into gold, and thus producing opulence in all that the practitioner undertakes. The devotion of early alchemists to discovering the secrets of alchemy was total, and was sanctified by the coordination between their minds and the work of their hands. These alchemists pursued their experiments even under the weight of persecution directed by the entrenched reactionary forces of those days, and it is a tribute to their lives and honor that they persevered in their search. Thus, they obtained the sincere results of their efforts, such as scientific achievements and philosophical knowledge, for the blessing of the culture and archives of this world. Students of this course must depart, realizing increasingly that I am determined to give their minds and feelings a new sense of freedom. The healthy concepts presented here should indicate to their entire being that the key to alchemy, which must precede the acquisition of all other keys, is self-mastery, to a greater or lesser extent. One must recognize the true value of this key, since self-mastery is the key to all self-knowledge. Therefore, this must be understood and used at least partially, and they must recognize without any doubt that they themselves are the alchemist who must determine the design of their own creation. Furthermore, they must understand themselves as the real self and their creation as the product of this self. Some may be surprised to learn that the overflowing whirlpools of discordant thoughts and feelings of man impose a daily hypnotic effect on almost all the inhabitants of the earth. These tend to nullify the great concentration of intelligent and creative power that is the heritage of every man, woman, and child on this planet, although very few consciously make use of it. While a growing number of human beings seek freedom, the reactionary elements, whether or not they have a purpose, attempt to subjugate the human race, imposing new shackles each time it manages to free itself from one form or another of slavery. To succeed, the alchemist must be aware of their freedom to create, granted by God, and rid themselves of those restrictions and cohesions imposed on the soul as forms of human slavery. However, in each case one must distinguish them from the necessary laws that structure society. Beauty and righteousness must shine in the left hand and in the right hand of the aspiring alchemist to remind him of the responsibility he has before God and before men to contemplate his works before delivering them, ensuring that they are truly good and beneficial for all men. In these studies on alchemy, I reveal visualization methods that will provide students, as long as they apply them as I have, with the capacity to render to God and man a service of the highest order. I believe that the myth of human equality is fading, and that in the dignity of equal opportunity, the evolutions of this planetary home will come to know and love the expansive potential of Christ in all men. In this way, the firm advancement of humanity will be characterized by a greater malleability of the soul and a lesser ignorance of man's universal purpose in developing his individual talents compared to what has existed until now on Earth. As the early alchemists achieved a certain degree of success in probing the secrets of the universe, they keenly saw the necessity to unite and to keep certain discoveries they had made secret. From this necessity arose several religious orders and secret societies, fragments of which have survived to this day. The necessity of both repression and expression was recognized, just as the enlightened men of today realize that harmony in society and between nations, as well as the extirpation of the causes of war and civil conflicts, eliminate any motive to withhold knowledge that could be of universal benefit. Let me affirm, for I can speak in the light of true knowledge, that the early alchemists were not nearly as mediocre as history would have us believe. Their discoveries were manifold, including both secular and religious knowledge, both scientific and philosophical. Above all, they uncovered many truths that, at later dates, became common knowledge. Let the world not despise all these tales that have been told about the suppression of inventions and new ideas for economic and political reasons, when it was in the interest of those holding high positions, often instructing their mercenaries to maintain precisely this timeless knowledge that represents the heritage of the inhabitants of all nations. Regardless of such shameful conduct, the masters of wisdom will never impart this knowledge to humanity until the alchemy of reasoning heals the internal rift of selfishness in a sufficient number of people, so that the disinterested hand of justice will forever hold the torch of knowledge. In these first 3 lessons, I prepare your minds so that they better assimilate the full emanation of the flame of wisdom that has been integrated into this course. Often men have been discouraged for not having a definite datum, long before it arrives in their hands. This feeling is indeed understandable, but lamentation devoid of constructive orientation is never beneficial. It is better for men to perceive that God's hour is reflected in the present moment, and not in ancient scrolls. The hieroglyphs that describe the errors of the past are already erased. A thread of gratitude rejoices in this progress that manifests today to dispel the ignorance of times past. The alchemy student is expected to have a resolute devotion to using the energies of the present to pave the way toward mastery of the future. Therefore, he must ensure that his current development in the science of alchemy is sufficient to transform the low qualities of human nature into an altar upon which the flame of living reality will animate the greatness of the golden age that is now emerging in the Christic spirit. Likewise, his efforts must be sufficient to counter the torments of worldly injustice, and he must also work to obtain for posterity ever more abundant epochs of progress, illumination, fidelity, and universal spirituality. When applied by the alchemist, symbols and symbolism, duly understood, are literally charged with meaning. For example, Mercury is the symbol of swiftness and conveys to consciousness the thought of a state of vigilance and respect that quickly gives action to chemistry through the intensity of its application. Salt equates to the idea of individuality and grants humanity the necessity for the individual to retain the flavor of his divine source, rather than preferring the crystallization of identity in the Sodom and Gomorrah of materiality, represented in the historical figure of Lot's wife. Fire, like life, is the catalyst that can be augmented by the cosmic light contained in cosmic rays in order to intensify and purify the radiance of life in the contemplated design. Moreover, the conscious invocation of life renders all manifestations of the alchemist doubly secure. The earth symbolizes the natural crystalline densities created from the energies of the spirit and sustained by the beings of the elemental realm. These tiny creators, imitating human discord, have transferred to nature the discordant patterns of humanity. Thus, the convergence of human error on the planet has manifested in the form of thorns, thistles, insects, and predatory animals, and the Pandora's box of astral forms has been opened by the delayed civilizations, whose deviated free will and selfishness have perverted the energies of life. Even in other planetary systems, it is this discord imposed upon the very atoms of substance that the alchemist must eliminate from his laboratory before he can create. It is this dross that the alchemist must eliminate by fire. I do not expect all readers to immediately understand all the concepts contained in this course. While it is true that I advocate for simplicity in the phraseology of God's fundamental laws, I am also aware that thought patterns expressed in a higher style will yield greater benefit as the world becomes capable of accepting them. Therefore, I include here elements intended to stimulate those who find themselves at all different levels of consciousness to study, so that they approve themselves before the divine flame within themselves. Thus, all who faithfully practice the teachings will achieve individual alchemical advancements. The most insidious type of slavery is that in which the prisoner is not aware of his chains. I am convinced that the true science of alchemy can serve to liberate all beings on earth who accept it. Therefore, out of respect for its supreme purpose, I consider it the sacred science. Remember, blessed children of men, that the purpose of true science must be to increase happiness and liberate the human race from any external condition that does not serve to elevate man to the state of virginal greatness of his original cosmic purpose. Any postulate, whether of a social, economic, religious, or scientific nature, should be imbued with the freedom that allows men to progress. Anyone attempting to advance humanity in these areas should recognize that there exists the possibility of change without challenging in any way these infallible cogs of the human spirit that are called life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Undoubtedly, the opportunity to progress and the freedom to innovate cannot alter the immutability of divine truth nor the integrity of the Word, whose power reveals its language from those limitless heights to which we all aspire together. As I progress with you in the sacred science, I am eternally grateful for this multifaceted quality of creation. The universe is fragmented from its core of unity, scattered into a diversity of light, color, tone, and density. Every participant in a landscape, whether pastoral or of transient ugliness, should remember that the shards of light rays that compose the mantle of all creation are directly connected to the great source and point of origin of cosmic unity. In my historical experiences preceding my ascension, which in its upward action was identical to the Passion of Jesus Christ, I found myself in a constant state of perceptive grace, during which my inner ears and eyes were fixed on a beautiful realm of light and perfection that helped extract from my consciousness the thorn of earthly life, producing in me a well-being that went unnoticed by my friends. Often they pondered the cause of my inner serenity without understanding its origin. The contacts I established with my earthly brothers and the times I appeared since my ascension did not always occur under circumstances where those I met were aware of my identity or power. Allow me to humbly state that, as in other similar cases, where a member of the ascending hierarchies chose to lift the veil of matter and the illusion of Maya to make direct contact with non-ascending humanity, this humanity welcomed angels without realizing it. I am very aware that some of my readers may think that, being one of those who have crossed the veil, this publication of my words is of a psychic or spiritualist nature. Let me quickly affirm that it is neither. Blessed be God that my own stream of life does not need to submit to such forms of limitation. The fact that we express or vibrate our life in higher dimensions where the ordinary faculties of man to see and hear do not function does not diminish our service or reality, nor does it compel me to submit to such methods of communication. Blessed are you who do not perceive, by ordinary means, the radio waves, since they remain inaudible until they are detected by the miracle of the electronic tube. Therefore, trust in the capacity of heaven to communicate directly with man. Since I have devoted myself to the holy cause of freedom since my ascension, I have tirelessly maintained contact with one or more streams of life, incarnate here on earth, and this by cosmic decree and with the approval of the celestial hierarchy. The beloved Jesus and other great beings of light who descended to fulfill the divine plan have manifested in the same way to his disciples throughout the centuries, and from time to time they manifest to men and women today with no more effort than that required to tune a radio or television. My purpose in addressing the subject of celestial messages that descend from the great cloud of witnesses is not so far removed from alchemy as it may seem at first glance, as it shows you a necessary part of my program in the cause for freedom, of which the current series on alchemy is an integral part. Keep in mind, blessed ones, that the creation of the visible depends entirely on those essences that are not visible to the naked eye. But the central ideas that occupy the minds of most people, because they originate from the transient effects of human causality, are not sufficiently important to merit commentary or to be established as a permanent reality. I am sure you will agree with me that just as the realm of ordinary human experience becomes monotonous for both great souls and small, it is also a wonderful blessing for them to be able to explore the higher octaves of creation through an adapted consciousness, thus directly attracting the inspiration of the Spirit and the God of nature. Ignorance and its consequence, the violation of the law, deprive the individual and society of enlightenment. The only remedy is enlightened obedience, accompanied by scientific attention to the details of the law. The benefits of divine wisdom remain unknown to many who believe that old customary theories are adequate to meet the demands of the moment, and that nothing else is necessary other than empiricism or the empirical method. In reality, the recognized principles of modern science, however partially true they may be, are incomplete and therefore offer an inadequate basis on which to support advanced research and control of the elements. An attitude of complacency hinders progress in any type of effort, whether human or divine. Therefore, grace does not abound where it should. Complacency remains a stronghold of reactive ignorance that prevents humanity from participating in the abundance that all of heaven waits to pour out on these free souls whose purity of heart and innocent nature make them highly receptive to our thoughts. Before providing them with deeper knowledge of alchemy, I wish to elevate these souls to that divine nobility which is as real as the daylight and represents their greatest strength to meet the challenges of tomorrow. This may require a certain examination of the spirit of those sincere alchemists whose excursions into the unknown have been productive in more than one sense. Even souls that have completely failed to discover a method for transforming base metals into gold have benefited beyond what they could ever dream through the blessings they received because of their quest. Even persecutions have served to gather them into a concentrated unity focused on a common purpose, which is already an achievement amid human diversity with its unfortunate tendencies towards greed and selfishness. I hope that you will prepare yourselves to succeed in your efforts. Above all, prepare to make the necessary changes in your preconceived thoughts and ideas, which will allow you to emerge victorious. If man hopes to succeed in alchemy, it truly depends on the higher laws of spiritual science, which must favor the faith upon which the strength of your invocation and concentration will rest. The fusion of metals, the control of atomic forces, and the direction of electronic energy by the spirit of man when acting in higher dimensions become quite easy once you have mastered them. Nevertheless, after having depended for many years on the five senses and thus accepted mortal limitation, I am convinced that you can realize how absolutely important it is for you to adjust your way of thinking to new possibilities, so that it operates free from human restrictions and the weakening of the divine fire of those who, through ignorance, claim that it is impossible. Let me tell you, in the name of freedom, try it all while you prepare your consciousness to receive the knowledge of tomorrow. Be aware of the necessity of reflecting on the origin of concepts regarding limitations. My beloveds, you must be reasonable and balanced in all your actions, but keep in mind that true science flirts with the miracle for those who do not understand its formulas. You approach a solid wall with the idea that you cannot pass through it. But it is by no means solid. It has as many holes as a chicken coop. You cannot walk on embers without burning your feet, and yet the sorcerers of cultures less enlightened than yours do so without getting hurt. Countless miracles of Christ have been reproduced by men and women of various times and places since his wondrous advent, and yet, due to human skepticism and forgetfulness, all this wonder has been relegated to the realm of myth or the imagination of credulous minds. I would like to plead here for the renewal of faith in the power of God, for it is a prerequisite for anyone aspiring to be a remarkable man of spiritual achievements. For the benefit of the sacred purposes of universal law itself, without faith, it is not only impossible to please God, but it is also clear that it is impossible to manifest the perfection of his laws. Given that faith is such a great requirement, would it not be very useful for each person to re-examine the motives they have for doubting? Note that most doubts stem from patterns of self-illusion, from the practice of deceit, and from the failure of the human spirit to realize its professed integrity. By recognizing that such negative conditions derive from a consent to error, would it not be much more sensible for all to direct their gaze toward me, the omnipotent presence of God, and live with God? All is possible. However, as in any other science, expertise is generally not acquired without knowledge and its persistent application. The few exceptions to this rule might be termed geniuses, but when the law is understood in its entirety, it will be proven that they too had their hours of study and practice. I want to especially point out that by revealing the alchemical secrets in this course, we pursue the goal of placing in your hands, and in the laboratory of your consciousness, the knowledge of the law that we ourselves have used through the centuries with the greatest success, and with that reverence for life that is essential for the curious spirit, which stabilizes in the loving intent of a sincere heart. Here, vain curiosity is replaced by the moral greatness that elevates man above his peers, so that he becomes a divine star in the firmament of his contemporaries, enhanced not by false pride or intellectual misunderstandings. The true alchemist maintains his humble attitude, keeping his attentive gaze on the master who will impart to him the precious knowledge of the ages, as long as his attitude and devotion are correct. I can tenderly express the hope that you reread the early lessons and assimilate a new sense of progress and new possibilities. I am determined that many in this class will succeed, and I will continue to do my part, above and below in your octave, so that this may be realized, and that great illumination, hope, peace and understanding may be born and renewed in you all. I remain faithfully yours. Saint Germain, Chapter 5, Necessity, Power and Motive for Change. The present moment must be used as a chalice of spiritual opportunity. Life must be satisfied with its highest goals, honored by devotion to uplifting principles, and earned by selfless service. My beloveds, the power to change lies within every man. Prefer this power to any limiting condition and observe how the alchemy of self unfolds. Transmute the lies of a dark substance that keep your souls from rising. Recognize that the conditions of all human limitation are merely ghosts parading on the stage of mortal existence, for the sole purpose of having eternal reality bury you forever. Every man must be aware of his alternatives and choose either freedom or slavery, while exploring the chemistry of his current state, focusing it in the mirror of truth, and then deciding to change any low condition by what he builds in the crucible of the moment, that sacred progress which is born of eternal perception. Therefore destroy the low and senseless mania of thought that has its origin in matter, that possessive nature, the perversion of the mother who, unable to appreciate all cosmic possibilities, limits herself to the trivialities and trifles of temporary possession. Allow heaven to use your consciousness to broaden your vision toward the infinite, and then finally contemplate the beautiful possibilities that exist in the most desperate external conditions. Give abundance to those who lack spirit, understanding to the rich, and mercy to all. It often happens that a life current possesses in abundance precisely those qualities that are lacking in its neighbor. Exchange your virtues, uplifting the valleys of the next, and trust that life will remove the peaks both of your pride and theirs. Transmute these undesirable conditions of your world by making a resolute and persistent effort. Every divine being that elevates the life of God within you knows that the power to do these things is in your hands at this moment, within reach of your intelligence and spirit. Build those spirals of success that compose the heavenly city and envelop the world of physical substance, conscious spirit, and the feelings of your hearts with the brilliance of immortal spheres. In contemplating the universe with renewed hope, recognize the necessity of maintaining the right attitude. Vanity has prevailed on earth for too long. Marvelous opportunities, like spirits in the night, have vanished with the dawn, hindered by the cold irons that imprison the soul in a layer of disintegrating elements that descend into the hourglass. The son of Isabella asked Christ, "Are you the one who was to come, or should we expect another?" Christ's answer referred to his miraculous acts. The deaf hear again, the blind see again, and the lame walk again. The lesson contained in his response insists that every life current accepts the greatness of its own reality. All should recognize that life has bestowed upon them its great and wonderful gifts through the consciousness of I am, which must emerge from the cave of materialism, the greasy separation of the whole, defective and incomplete parts. This concept that men have of themselves, as distant particles from their source, compels them to struggle against human misfortune instead of accepting the grand concept of the unity of cooperation, which is charged with the power of love and limitless freedom. The truth elevates all and defeats no one other than the enemies of righteousness, whose dark errors transform them into little more than wild animals in the jungle of human creation. Life has even given them more mercy than they deserve. I know this because I have the record before me. Beloved Huanin pleaded for mercy and generously bestowed it upon all, unlimited and freely. This is God's great gift. He always returns to life more love than life ever gives him selflessly. The greatness of God pours forth torrents of love when just a few drops would suffice, promoting humanity on its ascending path of pilgrimage, regardless of erroneous human notions. It is clear that depending on others is not the solution to your problems, nor will it serve to fulfill the plan that God has designated for you, blessed children of men. As enlightened alchemists guided by the torch of divine knowledge and aware of the magnificence of true individuality, you must evoke from the invisible realm the force and use in your worlds and affairs the procedures of alchemy. Transmute to overcome daily all external conditions by spiritual means and physical instruments that are at your disposal. You will not always be asked to make bricks without straw. What may seem extremely difficult is, in reality, just an obstacle to overcome for the determined alchemist. No one among those currently inhabiting the earth should limit their understanding of the concept that now is the favorable moment that raises every wave of opposition and leads it to the summit of victory. Each one should consider that their life at any age or moment is likely to improve and that they themselves have the capacity to overcome any condition by the power of will. Law and justice are the natural factors of control, but the universe, guided by its own law, has creative methods to transcend that law, drawing the cosmic dimensions closer and geometrically extending toward infinity. Friends of freedom must reject old ideas as soon as possible and discard outdated concepts like clothes that are out of fashion. In the time of Christopher Columbus, humanity struggled to accept the fact that the world was round and dogmatically submitted to the theory that the earth was flat. The chemical formulas, both of base matter and complex matter, are simple for the chemist, but for the unlearned they appear as just a tangle of symbols. Our objective in this course is not merely to provide knowledge, but rather to foster within you the acceptance of that knowledge through an almost a priori methodology. This is required because the categorical proof of alchemical laws is a universal truth that is necessary through the effect they have on humanity. Let there be light in the personal domain that concerns you and in the sphere of your being. Life is not an experiment, although men have experimented with it. Humanity has followed the current of the peripheral world of effects, neglecting the internal causative realm. All misery is rooted in the fundamental factors of cause. Correct the flaws, and you will heal by discovering yourselves. I'm interested in completely overturning harmful human attitudes and replacing them with correct methods and concepts so that all life can quickly overcome the heavy and gravitational magnetic human energy field that prevents humanity from gradually ascending. Let every aspiring alchemist first transform himself here and now through transmutation, thereby gaining inner peace and a sense of external achievement, especially by concluding each of life's deadlines. Without a doubt, the intensity of man's positive control, who has the power to alter substance from within and without, cannot manifest the blessing designated by God for all to enjoy and utilize daily, unless he maintains a hearth both internal and external where good is accentuated. My beloved, living to receive reward or punishment is not a reason for being. Most inhabitants of the earth have not rationally understood the intrinsic destiny of life, which is anchored only in a few. Every day, thousands find satisfaction in betting, racing, or gambling in the hope of winning, despite the enormous disadvantages, because they ignore the most certain law of all, the cosmic design. Those who deny God or life itself do so out of a lack of authentic experience. These individuals have not experienced within themselves the dawn of pure reason. They prefer to accept popular ideas associated with the attitude of not being credulous. They are legion for the losses suffered by such individuals. And while I do not hope to change each of these individuals, I advise again here that all feel inspired to pursue their search, for it is worth it. I know the law. The alchemy of action proves itself. Those who wish to engage in discussion to verify the non-existence or non-essentiality of a first cause may not want to deprive themselves of the ephemeral pleasure of that. Conversely, if they submit to divine logic, El Dorado, a grain of truth, will replace the shells of pride found in the stifling and impenetrable systems of human intellect. He who scorns verifying any knowledge that the physical senses do not perceive often enjoys imagining himself to be closely tied to venerable sages. Yet, I believe that the centuries I lived before ascending and those that have elapsed since allow me to make certain distinctions in this regard. Neither vanity nor human motives could inspire me to write this series. I keep only the deep love I feel for the earth as a unity in its cosmic progress in mind. And I desire to convey here something of the sweet simplicity of that love and the wisdom that it guides. Now let us see how reasonable it is to assume that a sufficient number of people serving harmoniously can change even the most petrified condition, creating a flow of love that will elevate peaks and valleys, inspiring to bridge the gap between the real of eternal alchemy, the total chemistry of God, and the artificial that arises from the caverns of degrading errors. Then the gold of integrity and personal integration that will emerge will be a gift that all will share. Likewise, the individual will reflect absolute genius and the society of the heavenly kingdom. The forces that would seek to bind humanity to its past errors, preventing the flame of peace from igniting in the present, must also be chained to heaven as on earth, and humanity must rise to deliver here and now the coup de grace to these forces before the war ends. It is only in the true understanding of life and the alchemy of being that one can liberate oneself from confusion, step by step. I lead you toward the correct understanding of alchemy in the early lessons, reminding you of your responsibility to verify the law of your own being by making proper use of alchemy. Now I remind you of the necessity to make changes in yourselves where they are advantageous. Finally, I will teach you the art and practice of precipitation. A prerequisite for applying the methods of precipitation is to know what you desire to precipitate. This is the truth that Jesus taught in the Our Father, and when he said, "Thy will be done, not mine," the will of God, the will of the Most High, is the will of your true self, of the most important part of yourselves. Given that the lower self, even though it still has the capacity to connect with the higher self through the soul, is nothing more than a bundle of impulses filled with particles of human knowledge, I recommend that you come to know the reality of your being, for this reality is the ingenious genius within you that can grant Aladdin, symbolizing the alchemist who rubs the lamp of pure knowledge, the legitimate desires of your immortal being. Now reflect on the necessity of change, to you the kingdom, on the power of change, to you the power, and on the motive to change, to you the glory in order to develop from the transient flame of seriousness the permanent sun of renewed hope. To graciously Joas or Enman, Chapter 6, Formative Factors. The mold, there is the problem. Yes, for the mold also contaminates. But how beautiful has been God's hope in creating each current of life. After descending into the world of forms and material substance, the years of formation unfold, during which the pressures, both loud and silent, leave their mark on the virginal whiteness of the individual's consciousness. Beginning with the first loving glance from astonished parents and relatives, a series of environmental factors gradually accumulates. This serves to create patterns and concepts on the tender screen of embryonic mind. These formative factors continue to exert their multifaceted influences on the plastic personality of man. And so, by first completely identifying with the good of God, he is affected and shaped by countless models of experience. Thus, example shapes the mind and being of man for better or for worse. However, experience is not the only way to expand consciousness, for every moment spent with God or with a member of his cosmic legions elevates and expands individual consciousness, providing instantaneous illumination in the blink of an eye. The empirical evidence of human imperfection is understood in the past and present lives of the masses. A life in captivity or danger despises the sense of existence. Religion and the hope of salvation arise from the human heart and spring forth from the human tree. Looking up, he said, "I see men as trees, but I see them walking." The alchemy of modification was necessary in the days of Jesus and continues to be necessary, for too often the mold is imperfect and the product cannot be better than its matrix. I have also said that the mold contaminates, and by that I draw your attention to the non-transmuted accumulation of human filth and misery, which, like garbage, is scattered on the sidewalks of human consciousness, emitting odors from the counters of worldly literature. The prostrate mold disguises itself as a legitimate culture while undermining the decency of robust souls. Freedom of the press was not intended for the corrupters of young minds to have free rein, nor to trouble and disorganize the people, flooding their brains with linguistic propaganda and prejudicial discrimination. In fact, the free press was meant to engender the power of light and inspire in all the due sense of cosmic destiny. O America, my beloved country, how precious are the traces of your known and unknown heroes. Although the heart of every mother may feel a justified pride when, with the consent of the governed, she offers the fruit of her life, the exemplary sons and daughters who, from the heart of this beloved nation, serve the cause of freedom throughout the earth. Because of the horrible effects of the mold, and by the same mold that must be countered, I make these comments regarding personal freedom that is achieved through the correct use of alchemy. I do not say that we will not speak of this subject throughout and until the end of this course. But with this, I give my specific advice to those who wish to use alchemy to promote their personal advances regarding the realization of the divine plan, thus improving their current conditions. Those who know the procedure for refining precious metals understand that intense heat is required to liquefy them. Heat is also needed to separate impurities and foreign materials from pure metal. The separation of the dross occurs in two ways. A portion evaporates and mixes with the atmosphere of the room where the refining furnace is lit, and a large part of the undesirable substance rises to the surface, where it is skimmed off by the attentive refiner. In this regard, few parents possess the kind of knowledge necessary to give their children the ability to understand from the start the principles of their total freedom. I do not say that the world is not full of aspirations and good intentions, but such paths do not seem to lead to the best places. That is why the sons of the world of action, generation after generation, increasingly understand the martial arts and artifices and the many customs of worldly society, without feeling too excited by the regenerated and peaceful society of the saints. In most cases, few are those who are born and spend their lives with a proper understanding of the universal purpose. Inevitably, personal destinies that often head in the opposite direction to the universal flow are periodically blocked and ruined. The pages of history are filled with the collapses of tyrants and the defeats of monsters with erroneous purposes. Failure and success provoke acceptance in many areas, while the ordinary man heads toward the cemetery of mediocrity. Nothing is further from God's plan and nature than these false imitations of the mean. What an inappropriate concept that a destiny can be shaped by human errors. How noble are those who recognize an intellect, a thought, a spiritual pastor, and a creator whose foresight, even greater than that of his emissaries, reveals itself as a mountain of the universal purpose that the courageous climb, those who do not hesitate or fear to trust in the wisdom of the first climbers of the steep peaks of the summit. Those who are in contact with the vital chord of these spiritual pioneers receive better advice. since the elder brothers of the race affectionately offer them the freedom of all times as a gift of faith. This gift is offered to all those who, by accepting this faith, can also have the willpower to aspire to it and the perseverance to allow it to shape them into an even purer mold and into an accumulation of that purity whose reality is the treasure of heaven. Dear friends of freedom, you now find yourselves at the entrance of the advanced truths of alchemy, which I make known in the 7th lesson. Nevertheless, it is necessary that you contemplate your lives in the light of perfect harmony with the spirit of universal alchemy. Do not return to acting guided by the vanity of desiring recognition, but by the value of a necessary accomplishment. And because service is necessary and worthy in itself, God needs a vehicle to manifest in the world of forms, and you lend him your hands and feet. It is essential that you understand the mystery of unity, through which a thread of contact between each life and its source serves to connect all those who live with a great central distribution picture. Here, the mutual action between thought and feeling is protected so that no part of life is harmed. On the holy mount of God, consider all the beauty of life possible and perceive as pure gold every motive of misfortune. Each portion of discord, fear, doubt, suspicion, condemnation, criticism, censure, and personal justification, and all negative particulars are either from the human mold or from the mold that needs to be purged. What is the glory for purity to regenerate a current of life that allows the individual to participate without reserve in the waters of life? It is not enough that men come to drink because they have received the invitation from the higher sources. They must make new wineskins to preserve the new wine of goodness and infinite purpose. This is spiritual alchemy, and it is wise to first reach this realm within oneself before trying to govern the elements of others or of nature. For in this way, karma is justified by wisdom, and sin becomes benevolent. Sin does not present itself at the door of such a practitioner, since his objective motives and methods are pure and just. His acts, gracious alchemists, already show by the simple fact that they study this course the interest they have in progressing. The simple word improving contains a spiritual lesson that must be learned deeply. The words impression and proving combine here to indicate that life transmits its impressions to the heart of your consciousness in order to verify the value of each impression. Thus, every vain thought is judged against the magnificence represented by the greatest glory of God, the ethereal light of the firmament. The Spirit of Christ is synonymous with the Spirit of Light, and characterizes the person who is in accord with the great intelligence. The flow of impressions that generally comes from the world should be used by the student to compare and verify the pure patterns of the designs of heaven. When these impressions are improved by the alchemical fire, they transform into the strong objects and useful ideas of man, permanent matrices of what is good, attracting more impressions of that nature to their consciousness. This is how the kingdom of individuality spreads on the wings of celestial wisdom, demonstrated daily by the words spoken from the hills of spiritual alertness. The sincere alchemist knows that the vast intelligence that created all that exists deploys the powerful wings of light across the entire cosmos. As above in the macrocosm, so below in the microcosm, this intelligence individualizes itself in the minimized world of appearances. The careful attention of God always manifests in his wonderful designs as a protective presence that seeks not profanation, but the glorious realization of each person in whom burns the flame of all-powerful and ever-present life. The so-called physical death does not represent the end of being, but simply divides eternal life into compartments of identity and experience, allowing for the full exploitation of expansion and opportunity, while discarding any worn mold. The aspirant can gather the forgotten fragments and weave them thread by thread until they form a tapestry of such beauty that it produces, in the one who contemplates it, a sense of gratitude for the perfection and glory present in every day of eternity. I am aware of the human discouragement that arises when one identifies with the elements of disintegration within society. I know well the frauds perpetrated in the name of religion, but I do not worry so much about these matters as I do about those lives that arise from the crucible of experiences, clothed in a wonderful, patinated golden robe. Their lives must never be empty, for life, which is intelligent and considered, watches over them. Life is palpable, real, serious, and tender. Life is dramatic and leads toward glory. The high path, as opposed to the low path, is the alchemist's trail, whose heart is in resplendent glory always and at all times when his pilgrim's foot treads the dusty paths of men, transmuting, and transmuting that dust into the purest brilliance. I am the life, I am the truth, and I am the way. Saint Germain, Chapter 7. Methods of Transfer. Light is the key to alchemy. The words "let there be light" represent the first fiat of creation and the first step towards proper precipitation. When man, who is already a manifestation of God, wishes to emulate the Supreme Father and precipitate as a true Son of Light, he must learn to do so. He must follow the methods used by the Supreme Intelligence if he hopes to achieve consistent and worthy results. When examining the obvious methods of the Creator and observing nature, one can deduce many precious things, as long as one educates oneself to think freely, for it is necessary to go beyond purely human syllogisms and penetrate the unlimited consciousness of God, who is the great master alchemist, in order to do likewise. Always considering the services rendered as good, when you decide to experiment with the art of precipitation, you must first create a mental sketch of the object you wish to produce. This should include the exact size, proportions, material, density, color, and the quality of the form visualized in all its details. Once the sketch is mentally established, it must be sealed immediately. This is an essential step for it to enter quickly and effectively into the world of material form. Do not misunderstand this step by believing that by sealing your plan, you put an end to any possibility of improving your design. This is not the case, as it can be improved in subsequent models. But unless you present this sketch as something completed to the elementals and builders of forms, they will not be able to manifest it correctly. Thus, the words, "it is accomplished," constitute the second fiat of creation after "let there be light." Now that you have just created a thought matrix, seal it against the intrusion of disturbing mental radiations from others, whether consciously in some cases through jealousy or ego, or unconsciously due to resistance to the progress of the collective consciousness of the masses. You must adhere to the third rule to protect your creative attempt and not tell anyone about it. This is also a law of precipitation that allows you to trap concentrated rays of human thought and feeling patterns that can significantly disrupt the success of an alchemical experiment unless certain protective measures are activated. Therefore, avoid allowing energy to dissipate due to the intrusion of a multiplicity of minds, except in cases where two or more individuals are cooperating specifically in a joint precipitation. Those who are scientific by nature and are familiar with Columbian dispersion and Rutherford's law will understand how the energy of thought, like waves that disperse other waves, can establish a sufficiently great penetration to break down the magnetic energy field of thought that focuses on the specific model of the creative matrix. Every student should recognize that geometric figures such as the square, triangle, circle, ellipse, and parallelogram are almost universally used to accomplish an act of creation in both the macrocosmic world and the three-dimensional microcosmic world. While in the mathematical world of algebra, calculus, and trigonometry, there are higher creations, the highest symbolism known to us at internal spiritual levels is the science of rhythms. This field of study is dedicated to controlling and emanating energy through engrams, a term we use when referring to the key that is the cause of the effects observed by the world's scientists and referred to by them as engrams. This concerns the use of mantras, the accumulation of etheric energy, and the protective measures that activate the principles of demarcation between the evolutions of human consciousness in the planes of matter and the world of perfect divine order existing in the planes of the spirit. Reflecting on this science, it is worth noting that even the infinite and omnipresent consciousness of God, extending into the realm of material creation, traverses the entire range of creative expressions, from the simplest to the most complex models. The student of alchemy should consider memory, when employed as an instrument of the higher mind, as an invaluable accessory for his experiments. Given that the processes of human memory are truly admirable, and that when coordinated with the mental body, a superlative action must always occur. Thus, there are several individuals capable of memorizing and performing an entire symphony without committing notable errors. Mathematicians also demonstrate marvelous faculties of mental control in calculations that reach almost infinite precision. Every student of alchemy must recognize that he carries within him a higher mind capable of containing models of infinite dimensions. This mind operates independently of the outer mind, free from any human restrictions. Thus, the vehicle of the higher mind, a purified memory body, is indispensable for the alchemist, as this body transmits the impressions of this mind to the outer mind that the sincere student, eager to reflect and practice the methods that control the mind and memory, which are the methods of God himself, acquires the habit of consciously giving his blessed higher mind, or his Christ self, the responsibility of conceiving and perfecting the embryonic ideas and models of his creation. Indeed, many of these models that, at first glance, seem to be consciously designed by the alchemist often originate from this higher part of the blessed self. Remember that your higher mind is in action 24 hours a day in extended dimensions. This blessed comforter, unknown and unperceived by you on the outside, awaits your call to spring into action, operating freely from the ordinary limitations of time and space. Therefore, utilize your higher mind, employing it both in the role of apprentice and master, since the Holy Spirit of truth active within you can lead you to all truth. I would like to draw students' attention to the fact that, if they desire, they can immensely benefit from alchemy through additional reading. However, care must be taken that the secondary aspects of technology and scientific theory do not divert the powerful flow of alchemy, the supreme science, into secondary paths of materialism, where the ends justify the means, as the saying goes. I fully realize that many related subjects would not only be boring to some of our students, but would also exceed their understanding. Since I do not want to prevent the masses from receiving the blessings of alchemy, I have deliberately expressed many of these points in a way that they can be easily understood. But let no one think that all knowledge can be attained with a simple approach or without effort and study. For those who desire more technical information to expand this course, I suggest studying the following subjects: wave propagation, quantum mechanics, basic and advanced chemistry and physics, seismology, astronomy, geology, and related subjects. These studies, along with courses in the humanities, world religions, and the works of Shakespeare, will be of immense value to you as long as you are guided internally and through your right discernments. Let no one think that the study of these additional subjects is absolutely necessary, or that it is an order given by the masters, since the most important teachings are included here, albeit sometimes between the lines. May God guide you, and to those who do not realize their reigns, I say that there is no reward without effort. I hold the firm hope that materialistic science does not view with too much suspicion the fact that the power of mind and spirit has control over matter. I doubt that religion can entirely deny the so-called miracles which, if one is to believe, demonstrate that individuals who have lived on earth have been capable of accomplishing transmutation, which simply consists of changing one form into another, such as water into wine, the amplification and multiplication of atomic and molecular substance, as in the multiplication of loaves and fishes, and the precipitation of elements, such as bringing down fire from heaven. Equally marvelous feats performed by ascended and non-ascended masters prove the existence of the extremely precise science of controlling matter and energy. For my part, I have never doubted the veracity of these things, simply because I have always maintained with humility the faith that the power of good endures. Moreover, my activity demonstrates the laws of alchemy that transform the entire process of controlling matter and energy into a daily affair. I realize that non-initiates, or those who have never witnessed the so-called miracles, can easily question their authenticity. Alchemists of God, I do not ask you to believe. I simply ask that to some degree you begin to demonstrate these truths for yourselves. Some students of the higher law have been able to successfully externalize directly from the universe one or more visible objects, such as a rose, a gemstone, or a cup with a liquid essence that vivifies both spirit and body. Naturally, we are eager to see people acquire the power to produce absolutely anything directly from the universe. Nevertheless, such secrets can hardly be written or clarified explicitly and totally, as we cannot disrupt the current economic system, as long as the inhabitants of the earth have not established greater justice. But these secrets cannot also be justifiably hidden from those who are worthy of them. That is why we have included wonderful keys throughout this course, which will open many doors to evident progress for the faithful or those who strive to be. Every ascended master possesses the powers to precipitate at will, and that is why he never lacks anything good. Let non-ascended men ask themselves this question. Until when will they spend their energies struggling to earn a meager existence from the reserves of nature, which for some seem truly empty, when all their needs can be satisfied by mastering the cosmic laws that Jesus Christ and other great masters of the past have demonstrated through their own lives? The use of the term light in alchemy encompasses light in, both its known visible aspects and in its invisible characteristics, some of which are still unknown to physical science. When I produced rare gems and precious stones through alchemy, the methods they used could not have been easily applied by an ordinary person unless they had acquired the necessary mental control through discipline, faith, and meditative calm. These methods are known to every initiate, and only an initiate could attempt the forces of evil just as they tempted Jesus, who, aware of his alchemical power, rejected the temptation to use alchemy during the time when his faith was being tested. Instead of alleviating his physical discomfort by commanding those stones to turn into bread, as he could have done, he manifested his loyalty to the supreme presence of God within himself and to the Word of God, giving them much more importance than the demands of his physical body. This helped him pass the test and prepare to master the disciplines that gave him victory over the cross and in the tomb, carrying her from the hill of Bethany to the arms of God. However, many seem to place less importance on spiritual alchemy and prefer more spectacular forms of psychic phenomena rather than achieving the transmutable changes that divine them. Men barely imagine that the promise that all these things will be added to them includes the power to control the wind and the waves, as well as substance and energy, once man has made the kingdom of God his primary and most important goal. Nevertheless, balance is required, and I am very happy to tell the students once again that the use of alchemy to effect changes in the physical octave is not indecent if used correctly. The methods of alchemy can be expressed simply and easily absorbed. However, their precepts require the practice of a master artist. Nevertheless, results can be achieved in various ways, as long as the student starts at least with this and makes an attempt. There are many methods of precipitation, but here I will only partially outline one of them. First, design a mental matrix of the desired object. Then, determine where you wish it to manifest. If you know the material substance it is composed of, memorize its atomic formation. If not, call upon divine intelligence within your higher mind to copy the desired formula by taking it from universal intelligence and imprinting it into the memory body and mind of yourselves. Recognize that light is an energetic substance that manifests universally on Earth through the solar center of being, the hearth of Christ in this solar system. Call for the light to take the form of the atomic action you have fixed in your mind, to gather around that formation and densify, and then transform into form. Call for this atomic structure to multiply until the molecules of the substance begin to fill the void of space where you wish the object to appear. When the entire scheme is filled with the vibratory action of the four-dimensional substance that represents the desired manifestation, ask for the atomic density to completely descend to three-dimensional form and substance in accordance with the formation established by the matrix in your mind, and then await the results. Do not put yourself under stress if your manifestation does not occur immediately, or if, after a reasonable time, it seems that it will have no result. Remember, O blessed ones, that despair destroys the very faith upon which your experience rests, for faith is the certainty of what is hoped for, the evidence of what is not visible, and you must keep your faith as long as you maintain the fixed veil of gauze that composes the mental image. If you have spent years under the fist of human emotions, absorbing the discord of collective consciousness, the doubts and fears of humanity, these recordings must be consumed by the alchemical fires to make room for those noble ideas and forms you wish to create with your imagination. You must dedicate your time and energy to your new ideas. Thus, you begin to weave a web of joy dedicated to spirituality, to the spiritualization of material consciousness, and to the materialization of celestial concepts here on earth, where the kingdom of God must manifest. I would like to point out that the exploration method used in the projection of television images, when an electronic current emits rays of fluorescent light onto a screen, and the electronic particles move in the form of horizontal lines creating a visible image in a microsecond, cannot be effectively used in alchemical precipitation. but it is extremely appropriate for the projection of mental images at a distance dot. In precipitation, there must be a rapid, three-dimensional expansion of light rays, whereas in the method used on the screen, the optical image is flat, in a single-dimensional plane. The study of cytology and embryology will provide the student with an understanding of how a cell multiplies and reproduces. When you wish to perform an instantaneous manifestation, the speed and intensity of light must reach astonishing quickness and power. It must be understood that the fact that the mind exerts such control over matter is not an ordinary procedure. While I do not say that common and ordinary people cannot master the technique to put these laws into practice, and that even the humblest individual cannot be invested or invest themselves with such authority in the inalienable rights that God grants to man, I do not wish for a feeling of frustration to arise among those attempting precipitation, nor for them to feel discouraged because they seem to fail. And I say, apparently, because the law is infallible in most cases where direct precipitation is not achieved. If the effort and technique are observed while having full confidence that the call demands a response, sooner or later, an indirect precipitation will occur, leading to the desired manifestation in one way or another. Remember that this is an art of supreme quality, and it is also a co-creation. With God, and as such, those who use it best are those whose goals flow parallel to the divine. Therefore, when the will of man is aligned with the will of God, the light of God precipitates that will without fail in the fullness of time, space, and opportunity. I have devoted 6 lessons to this subject, addressing practical methods that help the spiritual scientist to achieve greater personal joy day by day through the merging of the person with the very patterns of the principle. To successfully develop spiritual powers, it is necessary to have inner and outer peace, as well as a sense of personal well-being. Although some individuals manage amid conflicts, I admit that it takes bold leaders in many areas of action on Earth to discover and develop the type of society that could be considered designed by the gods. In addition to the alchemy of instantaneous precipitation, there is a need for the alchemy of preparation, intelligently planning the use of individual energies and opportunities so that life does not yield an eventual return on its energy investment in a life flow. I hope that up to this moment, my readers are not disappointed by the modest use I have made of their time and attention. I humbly assert that the repeated reading of this material will enlighten each of you further on the true depth of my perceptions that are intended to elevate those who belong to the various social and religious strata to regions of greater benefit for themselves, for God, and for humanity. If, after completing this course, I have achieved this to some extent or increased the possibility of doing so, I will be content. Perhaps some of you will want me to guide you personally when you attempt your first alchemical precipitation. I am happy to help all those who silently request my assistance, as long as the motivation is right and the desired change is beneficial for the plan of their lives. Be cautious and offer your prayers that, at all times, the will of God may be accomplished. Allow me to suggest that your first attempt be the precipitation of an amethyst in the shape of a Maltese cross. This would be excellent, as I have personally used alchemy to create many experimental models, and I am extremely happy to add my momentum to yours, from the simple to the complex, from the dawn of the beginning of the use of light rays to the southern zenith of progress, that all walk the paths of life as a caravan of faith, that every aspiring alchemist aims for the target of realization. You are building an eternal light right now, dedicated to your success. In this 8th chapter, Directing Consciousness, we approach with quiet reverence and the admiration of sacred understanding of the great spiritual laws that govern all outward manifestation. God's designs become more palpable for every man as he appreciates them more. Recognize how foolish it is to submit to the false principles of any educational system. However, it is equally foolish to deny the inherent truth and tested precepts of academic knowledge. Know yourselves to know nature, but master the art of sacred synthesis, through which the justice of truth will serve to integrate the field of knowledge. This internal relativity and cosmic measure between nature and self, whose precise mathematical action indicates that, just as God expresses himself in his geometry and creates according to geometric laws, man is also capable of perceiving and systematically demonstrating a correlational understanding of the wonderful works of the hands of God without the fallacious spell of the carnal mind. By stripping the creative grace contained in each atom of creation from the vibrations of human thoughts and feelings, all the substance of life shines purified by eternal hands. Now, it should be thus. The gravest error and the most intense suffering result from wrongly approaching pure reason. Realize, blessed sons of men, that few on earth would consciously continue to do evil if they were convinced that this is what they are doing. Therefore, it is the responsibility of the alchemical masters of humanity to serve God and man to the best of their abilities, removing any trace of malice and ignorance from the screen of human consciousness, starting with each of their personal concepts. Knowing how tenderly the students of this course are attentive to each of my words, I'm also imbued with a sense of reverence for the impending service. I cannot conceive how we could do less than respond to the calls made to us, in accordance with the great cosmic law. Even an ascended being who is in intimate contact with human beings could almost be possessed by a sense of urgency and the desire to break the chains that keep every blessed soul captive. However, for us, it is only possible to show the way and provide the specific guidance and service prescribed by the Karmic Council. The warning, "Man, know thyself," must be applied by you to the pure truth of being and not to human concepts of what truth is. However, it is dangerous to criticize others or their concepts, for only the individual himself can perceive through the screen of his own being his world and beyond, the cosmos. When you recognize what it means to interpret life for yourselves, you will realize how absolutely impossible it is to do so for another person. All the more so, an ordinary person cannot effectively penetrate the consciousness of another life current, nor accurately appreciate all the processes of their thoughts and feelings. By the grace of God, we are able to do this, and the Karmic Council, as well as the universal Christ self of all men, is often able to mediate hesitations in interfering with individual karma, unless we are urgently asked. Meanwhile, unascended, senseless humanity often rushes to decide how an individual should live or think. I trust the students of this activity to increasingly understand how they can mutually assist each other if they maintain the immaculate concept of each person's life plan, allowing their higher selves to guide them. Throughout the ages, the importance of a systematic prayer service has been observed. The daily offering of prayers has saved the lives of millions, expanded the lives of millions more, and tirelessly blessed all life. Prayer opens the door for God to intervene in human affairs, providing an avenue through which the ascended masters and cosmic beings wish to serve planet Earth and its evolutions. They can walk between the folds of universal justice and provide special assistance, as they have been called to do, given that the law decrees that the heavenly hosts must receive the supplications of a few human beings, asking them to intervene before they are granted permission to intercede on behalf of humanity. Would men retain their free will if heaven prevented any indecent desire from coming to pass? However, could the guardians of the human race who see the errors of human actions refrain from invoking the assistance of God's higher intelligence for the benefit of their wayward brothers in order to free life from the crystallized effects of men's erroneous concepts? For the alchemist, prayer has multiple values. In addition to the cited benefits, it gives him the impetus to ennoble his values and promote the realization of the objective of divine truth. As the mental mold is about to manifest physically, the beloved Jesus' exclamation at the moment of his greatest trial, "Not my will, but yours be done," teaches us a more advanced law of alchemy. When the alchemist utters it at the moment of sealing the mold, this call ensures that the guiding forces of the power of wisdom and love will correct the precipitated model wherever necessary, so that the most perfect design of the Creator may occur in the world of forms. This places the entire precipitation procedure in the energetic field of eternal perceptions, and offers man, as a co-creator with God, the added benefit of having the assistance of the Almighty as he shapes and develops his own schema of ideas about destiny, in accordance with the cosmic purpose. In my previous chapter, I mentioned the possibility that spirits might interfere in the precipitation process. Although I do not wish for anyone to fear such a possibility, I desire that everyone take care to protect themselves through prudent silence, measured action, and preventive meditation, which are the additional guarantees that the freedom to create what God wants us to have will be the destiny for all. Visualizing a blue light around yourselves, your mold, and your manifestation will help focus the desired protection. when Jesus Christ declared, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." It caused consternation among many of those who followed him as the Prince of Peace, and it continues to cause consternation to this day. My beloved, this statement, along with the next, "I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be those of his own household," have the common purpose of conveying a message of protection to each life current. The Savior has proclaimed to all human beings the necessity of protecting the divine design that belongs to them. Therefore, if some dared to tell others how they must live, it would sow discord among them, their families, and their friends. And if a man consciously chooses to seek, find, and follow his own divine design, even when that pattern does not please his father, mother, friends, or society, that man must accept it, even if it puts him at odds with those who still hold the concepts of worldly achievement. By following the Star of Bethlehem, the powerful inner magnet of Christ, one participates in the experience of Gethsemane, Calvary, the dawn of resurrection, and the hill of ascension. Therefore, no one can have true peace until the sword of divine discrimination makes him capable of discerning his reality and then protecting the inherent gifts and blessings that God has sealed within him, making each life current a glorious facet of the master plan of creation. I do not permit that my previous statement be taken as an excuse for human obstinacy. Without a doubt, it must be taken into account that many well-meaning parents and friends give wise advice, that many religious and educational leaders do the same, and that it is possible to learn a great deal by appreciating the wisdom of scholars and the educated. However, I am interested in each individual mastering the process of self-discrimination, developing the qualities of a leader, and the ability to weigh the counsel of others, depending obediently on God in the heights to penetrate the density of human reason with the light of his benevolence, which again represents the dawn and substance of pure reason in itself. There is no man who has a logic greater than the incomparable wisdom of the Word. However, here is a point of danger, a precarious state of consciousness in which a foolish withdrawal is felt by the student, and in that state he declares, "I only need God, and only He should tell me everything I want to know." Now, my beloved, when the king invites his son to a banquet, he employs his servants to place the dishes of his table before the son, who must then rise and partake of them for himself. Therefore, let all learn to recognize the true value of others and all things, without being deceived by appearances. Now I have reached the point where I am eager to convey to you a great mystery in such a way that the degree of accuracy with which you learn it will enable you to reap permanent benefits for your spirit and your affairs. Here is the following. The alchemist must understand consciousness as the supreme ingredient. My beloved, with God, all is possible for each of you. It is true now. If you possess your consciousness in truth, it is immediately possible for you to realize all things. If you do not have the instant experience of this, then you need more of your consciousness. You may tell me, so far so good, but how to acquire this nebulous something called consciousness? My beloved, what is it, and where is your consciousness? The tiny apexes of physical matter or atomic energy are composed of particles of light held in predetermined orbital paths and infused with intelligent action. This spiritual magnetism, animated by creative intelligence, power, and love, is a current whose density permeates the entire sphere and realm of each atom, extending to form molecular and cellular compositions, thus manifesting on a planetary scale through the elemental phases of nature. And it will be known, when this is correctly understood, that these particles spin on extraordinarily fantastic orbital paths through solar, galactic, and universal densities. The relative size has allowed men to feel that their consciousness is restricted to the body or the cell, as the case may be. The concept of a ghost chained to the human machine is entirely erroneous. While the flow of forces of mutual influences may become more complex, the idea of a consciousness that expands simultaneously with the expansion of the universe must be taken into account if man wishes to correctly master his affairs. Man is neither restricted to his body nor to an atom of substance within the body or the brain. Likewise, the atoms of physical matter that compose this body are neither confined to it nor limited in their expression by this body or by the density of matter and spirit. The power to extend outward and become a fully conscious part of the whole in a wonderfully spiritual way is God's gift to all. In doing so, no one loses anything of what is already theirs, and no one takes anything away from another person. By sharing the glories of God, the true meaning of the passage from the sacred scripture where St. John speaks of the little book that will be sweet in the mouth and bitter in the belly, refers to the assimilation of the idea that it contains within itself the universe, and that it is locked within the universe. The book of life mentioned in the Apocalypse is God's lexicon, and God's lexicon encompasses the entire cosmos, for it covers all of creation. Let no one take from another the share or privilege of enjoying all their cosmic truth. Let no one deprive themselves of this maximum privilege of life. Doing so means taking away either from oneself or from another their share, and God, who is the law, will undoubtedly restrict the one who acts thus to the same sphere of limitation to which they have restricted the other. Since everything that exists is the guardian of its brother, consider the best and highest possibilities for each. Therefore extend and contract consciousness to perceive not only the necessary inner realm of being, but also the universe that extends outward, and you will see how your consciousness will leap into the arms of the great eternal alchemist. Now, it is not my intention to leave the many subjects contained in this course without a spiritual and physical synopsis, and without an appendix of daily usefulness. Therefore, the next lesson will include the golden chord, which perhaps should be called harmony, as it must create in consciousness the final harmonizing key that will give this course permanent and invaluable value for all. I include this instruction in the hope that it will help frame the whole in a singularity and beautiful adornment. However, the whole we are referring to here is all your life. Master your consciousness by correctly directing your attention, thereby possessing the key to the precious deposit of God's eternal substance. Affectionately, Joas chapter 9, the Crucible of Being, with the soul so dead, breathes there the man who likewise never said to himself, "This is my native universe, it belongs to me." If I were to indicate a particular area of application in which students should strive more than in others, it would be that of expanding universal consciousness within the energy field of the individual. What man needs most now, and I say this unequivocally, is to develop and foster the sense that the universe wholly belongs to the individual. From this arises the inevitable conclusion that the individual must also feel as belonging to this universal cosmos as it is designed. As the student of alchemy approaches the temple of being, the life of unity, he must, if he wishes to learn correctly the meaning of existence and derive happiness from it, consider himself a perfect diamond, like the light set in a mount of perpetual elegance. When man accepts that he originates from these permanent realities that can be perceived and maintained in the due home of presumed progress by the interpretative mind and the heart of being, he intelligently renews his course directed toward the sublime reality. There is no greater obstacle to progress than the isolation that arises from a feeling of separation from life, where the smallness of the ego, which opposes indefinite probabilities, finds itself in the shadow of uncertainty. The unpredictable events of the future, due to their opacity, offer little comfort to the eager heart that awaits a response from the creative spirit of God and a foreseen perception of the depth of love that God feels for each of the parts that compose the vast totality of the cosmos, in all its immensity and grandeur, from the smallest to the greatest thought on earth. All require the benefit of durability in synchronizing with God's universal consciousness. Due to different religious concepts, men have imagined God as the creator of creatures, simply because they themselves are creating creatures. Using the immense flow of energy of being, man has diligently imagined and represented the nature of God, while only a few have perceived the truth that God is consciousness, and that as such, he is life, intelligence, will, and love that manifest in a rich variety of dimensions and attributes. Now I tell you that God is a benevolent impersonal personality, a personal impersonality, a personal personality, and an impersonal impersonality that composes the multiple consciousness of being. He gives and gives again from his creative self to the creatures he has made, in the hope that they will understand his designs and fully express the consciousness with which he has endowed them. As they mature and grow throughout their lives, men imitate one another, consciously and unconsciously copying the personalities that come into contact with their lives. They live in such a sense of unreality that they insist on identifying themselves as vile sinners. Not only do they accept the accusations of the accuser of our brethren, whose machinations are revealed in chapter 12 of the Apocalypse, but also the burden of growing waves of collective condemnation that, like a raging sea, threaten to engulf the real image of the higher self in an ocean of emotions. The ultimate aim of thoughts and feelings is to form a mold of fruitful and progressive experiences that, in turn, endow humanity with the highest attributes of its divine self. Understand, beloved alchemists, that your thoughts and feelings are the lines of collimation that adjust and align your energies, focusing them with your free will, whether to externalize constructive or destructive intentions in the world of forms. In their prevailing influences, men have abused the energies of their thoughts and feelings and, ignorant of the consequences of their lack of harmony, their mental and emotional irregularities and incongruities, have shaped the energies of light descending into their worlds into asymmetrical forms. What, by its nature, can never produce happiness for themselves or for any other part of life. The idea of a tempestuous, vengeful and unjust God is abominable from the start. The concept of an arbitrary divinity that shows favoritism is also distressing. This is why, according to the notion that man has of divinity, he becomes the arbiter of his destiny, and according to the use he makes of his energies, he predicts the truth or error in his life. The stratification of human consciousness, from the aboriginal to the learned man of the 20th century, skilled in philosophy, science, religion, and the higher mechanics of living, still exists today in various parts of the world, in all its nuances. Honest individuals will recognize within themselves these progressive stages of consciousness. Those who progress are in a constant state of disturbance. Now it is true that it may be more comfortable for man, at least temporarily, to languish under the sun and the moon in a dreamlike isolation, far from the trials of life, and without benefiting from the both violent yet always annoying alchemical heat, that like critical fires serves to purify humanity of its impurity. But I am sure that the soul eager to climb the hill of realization to reach the highest peaks will neither censure nor reject the necessary chain of experiences that aim to expand the mind, utilize the intellect, enrich the spirit, and test the brilliance of a man. As we deal with the subject of the gradations of consciousness, remember that each level represents a phase in the alchemy of the transition from the human to the divine, a just sense of equal opportunity that all have to become apprentices of the master alchemist is the prerequisite for achieving personal freedom. Recognizing the potential of a mobile and malleable consciousness is to recognize the lofty flight of the spirit. Being ready to accept personal responsibility for changing undesirable conditions in the field of being means accepting the responsibility of being a son of God. Those who flatter their ego by allowing energy patterns, namely vibrations of personal jealousy, to obstruct the entry to self-dominion while flattering the achievements of other life streams, will encounter obstacles in their progress on the path until they have transmuted these inclinations. **** Jealousy. Indeed has its roots in the doubt and fear that Almighty God Himself is incapable of granting each individual all the good and necessary talents that contribute to the fulfillment of His divine plan. Given that jealousy and competition between the individual expressions of God are fundamental causes of all the misery on earth, I emphatically stress the necessity for the student to submit them to the flame. The threat that jealousy poses to the self-discipline of the alchemist manifests in many ways so subtle that many honest-hearted individuals are unaware that these altered vibrations sometimes affect their feelings. The requests made in prayer and supplication, or in the form of invocations and affirmations called decrees, formulated in the name of God for the individual to free himself from any condition of struggle and conflict, will result in active and simultaneously peaceful progress. It must be understood that false identification with family and friends, acceptance of hereditary or environmental limitations, attachment to people and places, to one's own race, religion, nationality, or ethnic group must submit themselves to the flames of the refining fire to be transmuted. Personal attitudes must align with impersonal laws, and the patterns of thoughts and feelings must be shaped according to nobler conceptions if the individual wishes to achieve true spiritual progress. I do not say that individuals should not be faithful to those they love and believe in, But I assert that man must be faithful, above all, to his true self, to his own divine identity and to his Christ self, and then to all those who think like him. It is especially necessary to understand well and to practice correctly the purposes and uses of life. To awaken each day to seek again a vain pleasure and the doubtful hope of mortal expectations means a state of flaccid misery in which the soul hardly exercises itself. When the designs of heaven are truly understood, man greets the dawn and joyfully welcomes each new day in the fullness of life. Man hardly fears death, as I wrote in my essay on death under the name of Francis Bacon. It is as natural to die as it is to be born, and for a small child perhaps one is as painful as the other. Thus, in our alchemical studies, we have reached the point where we must understand the meaning of the mortification of untransmuted substance. Over the centuries, man has felt proud of his body, glorifying and deifying it. Artists have painted it, sculptors have created beautiful statues that exhibit it, and ultimately it becomes dust and decay. Throughout this process of corruption, the spirit of man would seemingly have created dwellings of eternal perfection in the heavens, which is partly true, as every good deed performed by him during his incarnation is recorded in his favor in the great concentric circles of light and in the electronic substance that composes his causal body, the body of the first cause, which is the dwelling of the presence of the Most High. Just as each individual who is a manifestation of God has a causal body, each also has a I Am presence that beats at the center of his body like the sacred fire, and in the energy field of the aura that surrounds this presence are the marks of his good deeds performed in his planetary home. I would therefore like to instill a law in the hearts of students of alchemy. God is absolutely just. The universe is absolutely just. Any injustice arises either because man misinterprets and misunderstands the course of events, or because he misapplies justice towards those who have not correctly understood life, or towards those who continue to ignore the laws of justice, whether divine or human. They cannot be entrusted with the preservation of the flame of justice. As I've already mentioned, every student must be ready to rid themselves of the chains of false masters and their false teachings. Every student must decide to break the chains of error while rejecting the image of the world as a place where integrity does not exist, and the insinuation that individuals are here to take advantage of one another. As the well-known and often quoted entrepreneur P.T. Barnum said, "Every minute a fool is born." Of course, men do not like to think that they have been deceived, which is why they often try to take advantage of their peers before the latter can exploit them. This way of thinking is the cause of an extremely unhealthy environment, both in business and in society. Although it is true that the world's leaders in various fields of action have the responsibility to set an example of integrity, nothing should prevent the followers of the world from manifesting that integrity which their leaders must display, or from raising virtue as an example for them. Much of what the world thinks of itself is correct, but the mistakes of individuals have been accepted without objection. This tacit acceptance contributes to creating both a weak civilization and weak individuality. Therefore, by strengthening the bonds of freedom throughout the world, a new man must arise from the social environment. A new Atlantis must appear, invested with the righteousness of the sun, a golden man for the golden age. This is the master alchemist. If this spiritual man, endowed with the power of the sun, the power of spiritual alchemy, and the virtue he already possesses but is often unaware of, is to appear today, it will be because he has offered that his body of corrupt substance be thrown into the crucible of the alchemical furnace. The early mystics and Christian writers alluded to this experience when they said that a man must die with Christ if he wishes to live with him. This death of the old man, along with his works, is limited to the crucible of spiritual alchemical experience. Therefore, it is possible that all undesirable conditions in a man's life can change so that he may undergo a glorious epic of transmutation, culminating in the vesture of the new man, finally free from the dross of human experience, appearing in all the resplendent glory of the divine experience that represents the integrity of resurrection. The agony of Gethsemane can be compared to the spiritual preparation that every alchemist must accomplish before consciously and deliberately submitting to the crucible of life so that he may emerge in the true glory of his being. This means dying with Christ with the certain hope that he will be reborn. My beloved, know that those who do not do so willingly will nonetheless go through the change called death, simply because they insist on following paths that lead to destruction. This change, however, without first having stripped the old man, will not lead to the indestructible Christness that God desires every son to manifest. It is a supreme demonstration of faith when a living soul, renouncing even its self-love, offers itself as a living sacrifice so that the Christic victory may be glorified in it. Such is a son of God, by profession. At the end of this part, I implore the aspirant to make every necessary sacrifice to discover the golden possibilities that shine through the mists of time and space in the form of spiritual reality, the hope of every man on earth. My beloved, just as heaven is not lost by a single thought or act of a life stream, it is also not gained by a single thought or act. However, his life can become a series of victories, where each correctly taken step pushes him toward a broader notion of the beauty and glory of the novelty of life. This comes down to resurrecting from among the dead works of materiality to the living exaltation of the Christic consciousness of spirituality, which invests those who devote themselves to it with the mission of Jesus Christ, one of the greatest alchemists of all time. Speaking of resurrection, I recall the words in The Beauty of the Lilies. Christ is born beyond the sea, with such glory in him that he transforms us, you and me, since he died to sanctify men. Let us live to set them free, while God continues his way. The newly resurrected man, in whom Christ is born, and in whom the glory of transfiguration is manifested, has risen by the power of change through the science of divine alchemy. In him, the dawn of each new day acquires a spiritual significance never before experienced. Consider each day as a chalice of opportunities to live in freedom and to liberate all men. Then all of nature extends its immortal hands, full of joy, in sweet communion with the desire of its life stream to rekindle the fires of freedom. The trees, the flowers, the stones, the earth, all the shades of expression of nature bow before the man who has become an instrument of freedom, lending him the care and attention of the master gardener himself. It is now understood that the Father who created the paradise of God referred to in Genesis is indeed the creator of all that is beautiful. The sylphs of the air, the undines of the sea, the fiery salamanders of fire, and the gnomes of the earth are recognized as elemental spirits created to assist this unique Father in crafting a kingdom of supreme beauty. The observing alchemist realizes that the carnal nature of man has been partially copied by the realm of nature. Since elementals, from the smallest to the largest, are great imitators of the human scene, they have adopted human concepts of duality, thorns, thistles, pain, and separation, which have been reflected on the screen of life. Although the discord and lack of harmony among men have plundered the virgin beauty of the earth, much beauty has endured, proving that the power of God is greater than the force of the deification of evil through his friendship with those who serve God and man in the natural realm. The pious alchemist learns to use the great spiritual flow of elemental life, and in the presence of the Holy Spirit, he finds cooperation with nature, which could not previously have been imagined even in dreams. By contemplating the blessed earth with all the grandeur of its undulating fertile prairies, its valleys, and its mountain ranges, and seeing the crystalline mirrors of its lakes and its tumultuous rivers that intertwine through the land, transporting the water element via channels of varying depths, man is filled with an admiring reverence. The planetary veins and arteries that carry the tireless energies of the eternal from one place to another on the spinning globe, the blue dome of the sky with its golden solar disk that warms and crystallizes, and its diadems of stars like the Pleiades, all this is flooded with a sense of unity that permeates all things. Nowhere is there a greater sense of unity than in the deep heart of the individual who is in perfect harmony with God and with his I Am presence, the individualized identity of the very perfection of the Creator. This complex of historical errors, composed of myriads of carnal facts and human abuses, is now transformed by the alchemical fires of spiritual regeneration, and in its place appears the integrity of the true being of man. He is no longer a part, but the whole of creation. These valleys and hills, these diadems of stars and distant spaces, are integral parts of him. He is their totality, and is in all with that exquisite sensation of the omnipresent wonder. And as an integral manifestation of God, man is capable of performing the miracles of the great alchemist and transforming his world into the marvelous glory of resurrection. The ancient sensations die, everything becomes new. With this, I wish for students to take a glance at the advancements that will arise in the world of science regarding these studies on alchemy. I am interested in offering them a glimpse of the greater control that man will exercise over the elements, because some of our aspiring alchemists may serve as instruments to produce these new techniques or extract them from the universe. Let us consider for a moment the development of the mental switch. Currently, lights, elevators, doors, and many devices are activated by switches or electronically. There are engineers working on a typewriter capable of phonetically writing the sentences dictated to it. The mental switch is even more revolutionary, as it will allow man to direct mechanical devices and electrical functions through brain waves, thus mastering the currents of energy that flow through his mind. Of course, many comical situations could arise where two individuals simultaneously transmit divergent impulses. This would pose no problem, as they would cancel each other out, or the stronger mental wave would prevail over the weaker one. Another advancement of the coming era will be a sensitized camera that will allow for the photographing of the human aura. This will help doctors discover the fundamental causes of many physical ailments and find solutions to psychiatric problems related to emotions and subconscious recordings of past experiences, including past lives, unknown to the patients themselves. The wave patterns caused by criminal tendencies and the crimes etched in the etheric body will be photographed or recorded by sensitive instruments in a graphic manner, similar to the current process used to record brain waves and impulses from the nervous system. Thus, evidence of guilt or innocence will be presented to judges who previously relied on incomplete knowledge of events when making decisions regarding criminals. When a better understanding of magnetism is achieved, it will be possible to amplify its power in such a way that it can hold furniture suspended in the air without any visible support. A new optical process is being developed that will help humans increase exploration of submicroscopic and atomic worlds. In this area, the amplification of images with great clarity will be made possible through methods previously unknown. With this advancement, chemists worldwide will know certain processes of transmutation, whereby the synthesis of new elements will be as easy as a child playing with building blocks. A new form of aeronautics and transportation will be possible, using an electronic ray projected onto the metal from which the vessel is built, thus negating the influences of gravity on it and conferring upon it a property of lightness akin to that of air. This will allow it to rise and completely resist the force of gravity. Then the vessel can be directed by atomic jets, so that everyone can benefit from a safer form of locomotion. A new advancement in the field of color television will soon appear, allowing for greater clarity in ranges of tones and chromatic values through artificial satellites, like those currently orbiting the Earth. A new system of meteorology and mapping will lead humanity to recognize the need for a central station to control the climate in order to manage its conditions over the majority of land surfaces. However, I believe this could be subject to much controversy and ultimately rejected until there is greater unity and friendship among different interest groups and between nations. The work initiated many years ago by Luther Burbank, who acted under the direction of the hierarchy in his experiments with nature and plant grafting, will reach a new degree of perfection as certain existing influences in the very heart of the seeds reveal themselves through advanced studies of cytology. The heart of the cactus contains a secret by which the arid regions of the earth can bloom like the rose and produce all kinds of fruits and vegetables with much less moisture than currently required, thus alleviating water shortages. The current growth of the global population, which seems to have led many demographers to reconsider and revise Malthusian doctrines in order to extinguish or limit human life, completely contradicting the laws of God, will concern future societies less as they perceive the wonderful methods to increase agricultural production, harvest the riches of the sea, and make unlimited use of atomic energy, both in advanced urbanization projects and in interplanetary colonization. There is a purpose in God's plans that far exceeds human intellectual understanding and the historical memory of the earth. The wonders that are to be realized will be regarded as insignificant. All life must remain in a state of constant expectation. The Spirit of God rejoices in generously giving His blessing. More than anything, students of light and human beings, Allow me to give you now a piece of advice. First, acquire from God our Father the wisdom to live peacefully, to treat one another with kindness and courtesy, to promote the education of men throughout the world, and above all, to avoid, through honest effort, increasing the number of those who are in need and prone to commit crimes against society. The importance of properly educating the youth and encouraging them to lead a life of useful service and good character cannot be overstated. The political scandals occurring in the nations of the world and the cruelty of the methods employed by totalitarian regimes, such as those practiced in countries dominated by communism, must collapse under the sword of the Prince of Peace. The Prince of Peace is symbolized by the pious Christ who goes forth to teach all nations that God's way is good, that his wonders are meant to be used and possessed by all and not by anyone exclusively. A form of life higher than that of vain competition must be pursued. Man must be inspired by God and not motivated by attaining social standing. Make this truth known. The sharing of heavenly grace is a message of the eternal care that the Great White Brotherhood sends to all who inhabit the earth. Abundance and peace go hand in hand, and this state of happiness is God's will. By the power of spiritual and natural alchemy, the planet rises to build new homes, new churches, new schools, a new civilization, new concepts, new virtues, new greatness, all linked by the eternal trust that springs from the very heart of God and is anchored in your physical heart, like a spark of expansive flame from the immortal alchemist. Part 3. The feeling of solitude. The onus must be transmuted and replaced by the certainty of the unity of the whole or the oneness. Man is born of God as a good being and must return to this goodness, transforming himself like it through the dignity of freedom and choice. The power, love, and wisdom of God are never tyrannical, but tenderly confer upon every creature of creation the joy of having the opportunity to know God in an unlimited way. Forgiveness, mercy, justice, peace, realization, and progress toward supreme supremacy are gifts that life has for all, through the process of its descent into matter and form. Man, as a part of God, destined to ultimately achieve victory, becomes the conscious master of all that he contemplates, as long as he does not forget his origin. By identifying with what is coarse, man almost immediately becomes entangled in the web of human creation, whose complications, like the thread of Ariadne, weave his fate. It is erroneous to do this prematurely, and that is why the Father or the I Am Presence knows the day and hour when each stream of life is truly prepared. As long as the entirety of external circumstances is not transcended and transmuted so that the stream of life realizes its original goals for which it entered the earthly orbit, it must continue its training and preparation according to the universal plan. Individuals who reflect and dedicate themselves to thought will quickly recognize that marriage, procreation, and the perpetuation of current customs of civilization are not, in themselves, the supreme goal of life. The world as a stage does not represent the cosmic Colosseum, and before the curtain falls after the final act, the drama of human existence will be represented in many corners of the universe that neither primitive man nor modern man has ever dreamed of. What man dreams of heaven is but a sweet glimpse of the images of the Elysium, kindly provided to humanity as a balm until he is capable of expanding his own spiritual vision and contemplating reality in the wonders of the Father in his many cosmic abodes. The supreme goal that God has projected for every stream of life on earth is the same victory that the beloved Jesus manifested from the hill of Bethany. The emphasis that Christianity places on the anguish of Gethsemane, the crucifixion, and the vigil at the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea has often overshadowed the great significance of the glory of resurrection and the mysteries of ascension for every man, woman, and child. The misunderstanding of the law of cause and effect and the lack of understanding of the universal Christ's atonement originate from the human concepts introduced with the parable of Eden, and which persist to this day, perpetuated by the distant mists of time and dogma. Unfortunately, delegated atonement has been accepted out of ignorance and is fully used as an excuse to act and continue to act wrongly. Thus, surrounded by an aura of unnecessary fear of God, men have persisted in transmitting false ideas from generation to generation in the name of God and the Holy Scriptures. The inscription of discord and wrongful acts in the four lower bodies of man, namely the physical, mental, memory, and emotional bodies, occurs through a scientifically ordered cosmic law, which is in itself the supreme instrument of creation. As creators, men have sown the wind and reaped a karmic storm. The victory of the universal Christ that the beloved Jesus demonstrated was meant to show man the path that would restore him to the image of God. This path has been revealed as the Christ or the divine light in every man who comes into the world. This wonderful light is therefore the light and life of the world, the individual world of each man. It is only when man walks in the light, just as the universal Christ is in the light, that he can return to the Father's abode. The forgiveness of sins is a pious instrument of the great law by which retribution or punishment for wrongful acts is suspended, so that a stream of life has the freedom to depart and sin no more, and then receive the opportunity to achieve greater spiritual progress. However, forgiveness does not absolve the soul of the obligation to atone for the tainted energies through the alchemical fires of transmutation. The rectification of wrongful acts committed against any part of life, even against oneself, must be fully realized with cosmic precision. Therefore, every jot and every tittle of the law must be fulfilled, whether in this life or the next. This process should not be viewed as a terrible judgment, but rather as a joyful expectation of being able to serve life and release the imprisoned splendor of life. For in serving life individually and universally, and invoking the alchemical fires on the altar of being, the individual can annul any lack of harmony that he would have imprudently cast upon his beautiful presence. Indeed, those to whom much has been forgiven can love much, for they feel the need to be eternally grateful for the goodness and mercy of God that endures forever. One of the main causes of stubbornness, arrogance, premeditated wickedness, disobedience, rebellion, and obstinacy is the vain hope of individual happiness without personal effort or personal safeguards. Humanity does not like the idea of conscientiously eliminating every thread and tangle it has put into the robe of life, or of reaching heaven through honest efforts. Nevertheless, one day it will have to personally face this truth. Therefore, now that the truth and justice that offer opportunities are within reach, this is the auspicious and favorable moment. Here now is the favorable time. Here now is the day of salvation. The desire to find in a master or a world savior a scapegoat for the sins one has committed does not correspond to the cosmic principles that are the basis of the law of atonement. A master of great light, such as Jesus the Christ or Gautama Buddha, can maintain balance for millions of souls who are not capable of bearing the weight of their own sense of sin. This act of restraint is a postponement of the law by which, through the mercy and personal sacrifice of someone who keeps the flame for all, humanity might find its way back to God, and then, with the power of rebirth and in the presence of the Holy Spirit, return to take up the unfinished work of settling its debts with life. Christ is the Savior of the world because with his immaculate heart, he defers the day of judgment and offers humanity another opportunity in time and space to comply with the requirements of immortality in the holy name of freedom. I cannot help but speak on these subjects because many have suffered in the astral world after crossing the change called death, and when they presented themselves before the lords of karma to account for their lives, they were judged deficient. Unfortunately, this may have only occurred because, being on earth, they accepted false religious doctrines and, in their misguided state, ceased to act correctly during the time allotted to them. Thus were realized the words that God spoke to the son of Adam, "Sin lies at the door," meaning that the record of abuses of divine energies is imminent. They must account for it in the plan of the world order that God has laid out. Atonement for sins is permanent and effective, for the violet flame transmutes any undesirable condition and balances all through light. This light is the universal Christ, the precious violet flame, an aspect of the consciousness of the Comforter, friend to every alchemist. It is both the chalice and the elixir of life, which infallibly produces perfection everywhere, as soon as it is asked to come into action. Once the violet flame accomplishes its perfect work, let all align in their efforts so that God may traverse the undulating waters of light to produce and maintain the justice of his eternal law. The peak or initiation of the ascension can and must come to all, even to little children, when they are prepared for it, when at least 51% of their karma has been balanced. This means that 51% of all the energy that was once given to them for their use has been transmuted and applied for constructive purposes. Their hearts are just with God and with man, aspiring to rise to the infallible light of the presence of God, eternally ascending. When their own presence I am, and the Karmic Council grant this gift to someone, the appearance of age leaves them as quickly as the lips form a smile, and the magnetism and energy of that person transform into the unlimited power of God that flows vigorously through their being. The shell of their physical body, the fatigue of their emotionally exhausted body by hatred and its monstrous creations, the incessant routine of their mental body, all of this fades away and is replaced with perfect ease by their divine counterparts. Feelings are fulfilled by the love of God and the angels. The Spirit is the Spirit of God, of a diamond-like brilliance, omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. The whole being is inspired and thus longs for what at one time descended filled with hope, now ascends back to the light from which it came in union with the angels and nature, with the friendship of the ascended masters, and in the company of the august fraternity of the great white brotherhood. Each of them, by their intrinsic divine merit, reaches the fullness of all that God would one day grant to each of his children, regardless of the person of man. In joyful recognition of the victory of this, "You are my beloved Son. This day I begat you." The prologue, religion, and spirituality are not a shame, but instruments of the eternally creative arts. They are the friends of the alchemist who wishes to transform every base element of human nature and all of life into the gold of Christic realization. This teaching contains the keys to the highest portal and must fit the lock to grant entry to the supreme initiation. I am the door that leads to the progressive revelation of the ever-ascending plans of consciousness, all within its beloved presence of God. I am blessed. In alchemy, they are not limited merely to extracting three-dimensional objects from universal light. One can master alchemy to illuminate the mind, heal any undesirable condition, and spiritually elevate the entire nature of man from its base state to the golden standard where the golden rule reigns. With you, as with God, all things are possible. There is no higher path. For example, the brilliance of current Soviet science cannot conquer the universe for the blessed sons of Mother Russia. Only God can give eternal satisfaction to all the earth. Let the wicked tremble, for they will be blinded like the grass while the righteous will shine. As children of the great alchemist of Almighty God, there is more study on alchemy for all who wish to progress in this science of self-mastery. Part of this material is presented in the lessons for the fraternity of the Keepers of the Flame, another in the weekly editions of Pearls of Wisdom, written by the masters of our fraternity, and others that I will communicate to you individually in response to the call of your hearts. But you must call if you want this righteous cause to manifest within you. Call upon me, and I will respond to you, says God the Most High. The Father will reward you openly for every devout prayer you make in secret in the innermost corner of your heart, unknown to any man. You can always call in silence. There, within your hearts, lies the crucible of eternal essence, the white stone, the elixir, and the alchemist of the sacred fire. Here is the holy cosmic formula. If equal to God, R equals law and equals being, equal to the law of God that acts as the principle within your being. TR, that is, remain in constant harmony with your true being. Pax Boviscum Sanus Germanus, 1696 to 1784, was an enigmatic figure described as a courtier, adventurer, inventor, alchemist, pianist, violinist, and amateur composer, known for being a recurring character in several occult-themed stories, husband of Amanda, reigning from 1698 to 1781. Some sources state that the famous French nickname comes from the Latin Sanctus Germanus, meaning Saint Brother. Although it is unknown when or where he was born, he is believed to have been born on May 26, 1696, in a castle in the Carpathian Mountains, son of the last king of Transylvania, Francis Rákóczi I, and his first wife Teleki. Nevertheless, his death is recorded as occurring on February 27, 1784, in Eckernford. His story is written in the most holy trinosophy, better known as the Very Holy Trinosophy. This is the only book he wrote, thus the other books attributed to him are apocryphal. He was part of Freemasonry, although he was not opposed to the monarchy of France. The advice he gave to this court to try to avert the revolution was not heeded. St. Matthew 14:22, 33, St. Mark 5:25, 34, St. Matthew 5:45, St. Matthew 11:12, Atlantean, citizen of Atlantis, the lost continent where an advanced civilization flourished in ancient times, before the flood. Atlantis is mentioned in the works of Plato and is the prototype of the ideal society and scientifically organized state described by Francis Bacon in his literary work Nova Atlantis. The Great White Brotherhood is a spiritual order of hierarchy, an organization of divine ascended masters, united by the sublime ideals of brotherhood among men under the fatherhood of God. The term white does not refer to race but to the white light of Christ that surrounds the saints and sages of all times, who have emerged from all nations to count themselves among the immortals. The term voice in Sanskrit refers to the person who is the incarnation of God. Vaso or chalice used by Jesus Christ at the Last Supper and held by Joseph of Arimathea at the foot of the cross to receive the precious blood of Christ. Centuries later, the Holy Grail appeared in a vision that the Knights of the Round Table of King Arthur had, miraculously providing them with everything they desired. It is also described as a chalice possessing healing powers. It became an object of constant quest, and only those who are truly pure could find it. 1 Peter 4:18, John 11:25, St. Matthew 5:13, Genesis 19:26, 2 Timothy 2:15, St. Matthew 11:2, 5 Exodus 5:6-19, St. Matthew 16:19, 18:18, St. Luke 22:42, 1 Corinthians 15:52, St. Mark 8:22, 26. The psychic energy of the Tibetan voice. Thot, the incessant energy that is found diffused throughout the cosmos, is the driving force of evolution and the manifestation of life in the universe. It is the primordial light, the intelligent and vital force anchored at the center of every atom, always obedient to the divine design and desire. St. John 15:26, St. John 2:1, 11 St. Matthew 14:19, 21 2 Chronicles 7:13, St. Matthew 4:3 St. Matthew 6:33, Hebrews 11:1. Tribunal of spiritual regents representing the divine essence of administering justice to humanity. St. Luke 22:42, St. Matthew 10:34, 36, St. Matthew 19:26, Revelation 10:9, Revelation 22:18, 19. Ariadne, the heroine of Greek mythology, daughter of Pasiphae and the Cretan king Minos, lover of the Athenian hero Theseus, to whom she provided a thread of shining jewels with which she helped him escape the labyrinth after he killed the Minotaur. The 7 ascended masters who are part of the tribunal of ascended masters of human karma, who administer justice in this system of worlds. All the souls of the earth, this tribunal acting in accordance with the presence I Am and the individual Christ, determines when each soul has earned the right to be free from the wheel of karma and the cycles of rebirth.